Good. So we had, I can recall that we had started the sources of finance, and we had discussed the pros and cons of some of the sources of finance. I guess we had completed the equity entirely. Then we had started the term loans, which was also called as the debt finance. So we were there into that. I guess the advantages were discussed. And before we start discussing the disadvantages, the time was over. So we were there into the disadvantages part of the term loan finance. Okay, so let me just share the slideshow and then we'll move ahead. Well, before I take you to the disadvantages, I'll give you the brief overview of what we had done in the advantages part, my friends. So the first advantage we had seen was, sir, there is a tax benefit with the term loans. The interest we pay is a tax deductible expense. Hence, our profits are reduced by some extent. Because of the fact that our profits are reduced, we will be paying the less amount of tax on it. As simple as that. Sir, it does not result into any dilution of control as well, because unlike equity shares, they do not have any power to interfere into the governance and management of the company. The interest and the principal, that is the amount we are limited liability, that is the limited liability amount we have. So whenever the company will be growing and expanding and doing extraordinarily well, their expectations are never going to grow, because anyway we have taken the fixed obligation. As the name itself suggests, it's a fixed obligation. तो हमें ज्यादा कुछ भी पे करने की जरूरत नहीं है. कोई भी लोन वाला आके आपको नहीं बोलता, ओ अच्छा परफॉर्म करने लगे हो, चलो थोड़ा सा और इंटरेस्ट दे दो. कोई बोलता है? कोई नहीं कहता. Maturity of the loan can be synced with the period for which the firm needs the funds. We require the money only for the 5 years. You would be taking loan only for the 5 years. But my friends, if it is the equity shares, then they are permanently in. You require money only for 5 years, but they are permanently in, and you cannot take them away as well. They are the owners. They would be taking you away from the company, not you. Cost of issue of loan on debt is significantly lower. You go to the branch manager of a bank, you just put across your requirement. You say that this is the amount of loan I require. If your financial statements are sound, if your financial position is very good, straight away, without taking too much of time, the loan would be disbursed, sanctioned to you. Fixed percentage of the debt provides the protection against the high inflation. My friends, I have already explained this point quite in a detail, not repeating that again, but you people now know that if you have the fixed obligation to pay in terms of interest, and if the inflation turns out to be unexpectedly high, in that the loan percentage protection. When it comes to a high inflation period, as a businessman, you enjoy doing the business. Specifically, when the demand of your products and services is not very much elastic. Some of the necessity goods, if you take, even if the prices are increased by many folds, the demand is not decreased a lot. The demand remains stable in some of the periods, even though the prices are sky high. So in those periods, my friends, you'll be making too much of money in terms of profits, because obviously your income side would be higher than your expense side. That's why you are doing the business. You are not there to do the voluntary service so that your expense would be higher than your income. No. And if you have the fixed percentage of the debt on it, unlike equity shares, it is beneficial for you, right? But similar point will be a disadvantage for you when the inflation rate turns out to be unexpectedly low. if the inflation rate is low, or if it is a deflationary situations where the prices are reduced, in those kind of situations, my friends, if you have the fixed percentage of the obligation on loans and borrowings, that is against you. That is working against you. It brings a disciplining effect. कहीं ना कहीं से पैसे निकल नहीं पड़ेंगे, कोरोना है नहीं है, बीमार हूं नहीं हूं, बिजनेस ऑपरेट हो रहा है नहीं हो रहा है, कुछ भी हो भैया, this is something you will have to take at any cost. Easier for management to communicate the important information to private lenders than to public in the capital markets. These points we had seen. Let's go to the disadvantages without wasting much of time now. The first disadvantage we have is that it entails the fixed interest and principal repayment. Even in the case of uncertainties, when the businesses are not performing well, when the lockdowns are imposed on the businesses, can you get away from a responsibility of making the payment of loans? No. That's what happened with all the owners of restaurants, cafes, all the people who had the rented premises, all the people who had hired some of the things in the lockdown periods. They were forced to pay the rent, the fixed obligation on it. That's what happens with the term loan finance as well. Even though you do not make the profits, you cannot say, oh मेरे भाई मेरे पास अब profit नहीं है, मैं interest pay नहीं करूंगा. नहीं कह सकते. It increases the leverage. Any kind of the fixed obligation you take, my friend, is increases the leverage for you. Any kind of the fixed obligation. The simplest definition of the risk is the fixed obligation. The higher fixed obligation you take, that is the risk you have taken. Every kind of the expenses you analyze, more and more proportion of the fixed expenses you have, higher and higher risk your company is possessing. Because you cannot get away from the responsibility of making the payments for the fixed obligations. No one can. That's why it's a leverage. Up to certain point of time, it gives you the advantages, you know. But if your company turns out to be the company of Anil Ambani rather than Mukesh Ambani, then we know that what happens when you have too much of obligation to pay the interests. For some time, you receive the benefits of debt because debt is cheaper source of finance. You get the tax advantage benefit as well. But after some point of time, you keep on taking loans, more and more loans, more and more loans. Then it becomes extremely problematic. Lenders may impose restrictions on borrowing firms' financials and operating flexibility. That happens only after your risk position is too high after certain extent. If you are Mukesh Ambani, then absolutely there is no worry. But if you are Anil Ambani, then there is a problem. Then people will put restrictions, more and more restrictions on you, you know. We had already discussed this point that if the inflation turns out to be unexpectedly low, then the real cost of debt will be greater than the expected. My friends, if you have the 2% inflation rate, or I may say that you just have a zero or negligible inflation rate in some of the periods, the prices are not getting increased at all. In such kind of situations, the fixed obligation you have taken on the interest rate is working against you. We generally find the real cost of loan by this formula, which is rate of interest minus inflation rate, મોંઘવારીનો દર. Now, if the rate of interest is 8% and inflation rate is just 1%, the effective interest rate for you is 7%. But when the rate of interest which you are paying on the loans is 8%, against which the inflation rate is 7%, your effective interest rate is just 1%, because, my friend, the prices of your goods and services are getting increased by 7% simultaneously at the same time, and you are making the payment of interest of 8%. So effectively, you are supposed to pay only 1% on it. Yes. Now, some people would argue that, sir, if we have revenues and profits and everything, there is expense side as well. Absolutely, there would be an expense side too. But my friends, you are doing the business to keep your income side higher than your expense side, right? You want some profitability amounts. You want some profit figures. So your revenue side will anyway, in any situation, would always be higher than your expense side. That's why you're doing the business. हम वहां पे बाबा जी की तरह ऐसा कंटिन्यूअल माला पहन के लोगों की सेवा करने के लिए तो नहीं गए हैं, हम तो वहां पे प्रॉफिट अर्न करने के लिए गए हैं, तो हमारा रेवेन्यू साइड ज्यादा ही होगा. I hope everyone is able to get it. So my profits would be increased by 8%, 7% because of the inflation, and my cost of the loan is 8%. So effectively, I'm making only 1%. But if the inflation rate turns out to be negative, deflationary kind of a situations, so in that, the real cost of borrowing increases unexpectedly. Your profitabilities are not affected. You are not going to get any amount of additional profits as well because of the low inflation. So your real cost of debt is very, 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 very high. I hope the disadvantages are absolutely clear to everyone. May I have the confirmation from the students, please, all of you? Are all disadvantages crystal clear to everyone? Miss Veronica saying clear, good. Miss Hemali, Mr. Deepesh too, nice to see that. I hope everyone would have got it. Any queries, any questions, please let me know, guys. अब तो हर एक को मालूम पड़ गया है कि सर अंतर्यामी बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. जब तक बोलेंगे नहीं तब तक कुछ होगा नहीं. બોલે એના બોર વેચાય. ન બોલવાના નવગુણ આમાં અપ્લાય નહીં કરવાનું, હે ને? આમાં તો બોલે એના બોર જ વેચાય. એ જ એપ્લિકેબલ છે. Let's go to the debentures, which is the sister of the term loans. तो ज्यादातर qualities मिलती आती है. Now, what is the primary difference with the debentures? Now, think from the perspective of the company, not from the investment perspective. The company wants to get some money from the people, so they are issuing the debentures. So we are thinking from the perspective of the company right now. Now, say debentures is the loan only, but it is the small amount of loan taken from the individuals, small amounts of loan taken in terms of certificates and deposits, So say instead of taking 1 crore of loan from one party, you would be dividing that 1 crore of loan into small parts, say the parts of 100 rupees. So 100 rupees would be regarded as one debenture, and that 1 crore of loan will be further bifurcated into 100 rupees of small loans. Now that is called as the debenture. One more terminology which is quite famous among the people is the bonds. Now bonds and debentures are used interchangeably in majority of the situations, but there is a slight difference between the two. Bond is used, the word bond is used when the loans are very secured. Secured means they have some security backup. The security backup would be of any assets, movable or immovable assets. But the term debenture is used when the loans are unsecured in nature. Now that is a terminology often used interchangeably by the people, but still there is a slight difference technically. There can still be, overlapping of these two words. You may see that bonds are used somewhere. You may see debentures are used somewhere. But the primary difference over here is that technically bonds are those kind of debentures which are secured. They have a security at a place. Can be hypothecation, can be mortgage, or it can be uh, pledge, as we have seen till now. So they are basically a small promissory notes issued by a company to the person who wants to invest in a debentures of a company. Now there has to be the legal process, obviously. Not every time Tom, Dick and Harry can issue the debentures. Companies will have to take the permission from the registrar of companies. Then if the companies are listed, then Securities and Exchange Board of India's approval should also be taken, because SEBI is the guiding authority, regulating authority for the companies which are publicly listed. Then in some of the cases, the rating should also be done. So public should also come to know that how these bonds are rated. You know, uh, the rating agencies like ICRA and all such rating agencies gives you the rating for the bonds and debentures which are issued by the company. So in some of the situations, it is mandatory to be done as per the SEBI, but it gives you the variety of choices, with respect to maturity, interest rate, security, repayment, and some other special features as well. So we are going to see all such varieties now. So these are the basic features of debentures. There has to be the trustee who will be taking the responsibility. Just like in a marriage, you have got one middleman who takes the responsibility of both the sides. कि यहाँ से कुछ प्रॉब्लम होगा तो मैं जिम्मेदार हूँ, यहाँ से कुछ प्रॉब्लम होगा तो भी मैं जिम्मेदार हूँ. सो ये ट्रस्टी होते हैं, वो बीच वाले बंदे होते हैं ना. उस बीच वाले बंदों का काम ये रहता है कि if the companies make some defaults in making the interest payments or the payment of debentures at the time of liquidation or maturity, so trustees keep on checking the financial position of the company. If company is taking some overwhelming burden of further loans and advances, then trustees would be skeptic about it. The trustees would be communicating the message of the entire debenture community, and they would be forwarding it to the company at large. So they are basically the coordinators appointed between the management of the company and the debentures at large. Because debenture holders are many, so thousand number of people cannot communicate with the company at one time. So there has to be some representatives. So debentures are basically kept in the custody of the trustees, and even the securities which are taken against the debentures are also in the custody of trustees. So say if some company have created a charge on an asset while issuing the debentures, so if there are certain problems with those assets, if those assets are breaking down, or those assets are being sold by a company, so this trustees would be taking the constant care of it. Trustees would be communicating the messages to the company that if the charges are being created, then what is the situation of those charged assets. So they would be taking the periodic review from the company on a time to time basis. So there will be a security, might be secured, might be unsecured. अगर भरोसा है तो unsecured, भरोसा नहीं है तो unsecured, भरोसा नहीं है तो secured, sorry. So now securities depends, it can be mortgages, it can be pledge, it can be hypothecation. I have already given you the idea about it. There are bhanti ke interest rates, different types of interest rates. Company may come up with 7%, 8%, 10% as well. The major reason behind the fall of that Templeton debt funds was that they had invested into a very risky companies. So there was one mutual fund, debt funds in fact. So they were investing into the debentures of these corporates, bonds of these corporates. Now they had invested into such companies whose profile were very risky. Their businesses were very risky. Now, due to a corona or some other uncertainties, the, they started facing some financial crunches, and because of that, those companies started shutting down. So those mutual funds who had invested in those companies faced the tremendous amount of losses. Ultimately, those losses were suffered by the people who had invested in those debentures. So in those mutual funds, So mutual funds, there are various types of it. It can be a debt mutual fund, it can be a equity mutual fund, there can be many other types as well. So there was a bankruptcy that was filed by the Templeton Mutual Funds, primarily known for the debt funds. So as an investor, you should be taking care of that too, that where your mutual funds are investing that amount further, And if they are investing into debentures of some of the companies, then there has to be the risk profile checkup for those companies as well. There will be a maturity and redemption. Now there are irredeemable debentures as well. There are irredeemable debentures as well. They are issued for the infinite period till the time the company would be there in the business. Now we do not know that up to what point of time the company would be there in a business. So obviously it's the perpetual debentures. But nowadays we have got some regulations on the perpetual bonds as well. The time frames are kept limited nowadays. Few complexities are introduced by the SEBI as well as the company. Not going into those technicalities right now, but at least we should be aware that it can be redeemable. It can be irredeemable as well. Irredeemable are those debentures which will never be called by a company. They are there permanently for a lifetime. But majority of the debentures are issued by the companies. Overwhelming majority, in fact, are redeemable kind of the debentures in India. But there are few irredeemable debentures as well. It may have the call and put feature too. Do not get confused with the derivatives on equity part. So call and put feature is from a company's perspective. So if there is a call option with that debenture, that means the company can redeem it even before its maturity. So if the maturity of the debenture is say 10 years, then if the company would be having the call option, so they can redeem it even before the 10 years if they are of the opinion to redeem it before it. So they may redeem it even at the 7 years and even at 8 years, and there is a put option as well. Now that is a right given to a person who has invested into these debentures. So if that fellow do not want to remain in that debentures, then he can cancel off the debenture even before the maturity. So it's up to a company whether to allow the call option or put option along with the debentures or not. So that's again a features of the debentures. The advantages and the disadvantages of the debentures are same as the term loans. So you may refer the term loans, debt finance. Advantages, disadvantages are same, except few distinct features we have seen for the debentures specifically applicable to them only. Rest everything would be applicable to the debentures as well as it was applicable to loans and borrowings. I hope everyone is absolutely crystal clear with the debentures part now. All of you, confirmation please. Good, thank you. Okay, let's go to the reserves and surpluses now, internal accruals. Now, this is something which is a fund gathered by a company over a period of time because company is doing the business, obviously. So obviously they would have gathered some amount of money on a yearly basis, and all those money is considered as the internal accruals generated by the company during its business period. So So these are primarily the three things which are forming a part of your accruals. One is the profits you have gathered, then it can be existing reserves, and the third one can be the securities premium. Now securities premium is nothing but the additional money the companies have taken over and above the face value of the shares. So when generally the shares are issued to the public at large, my friends, they are issued at the premium. So say the shares are issued at, just giving the example, 700 rupees, and 100 rupees is the face value of the share as per the balance sheet. Then 600 rupees is collected by a company over and above the face value. That amount is also called as the security premium, because obviously the company would be charging the money based on the demand they have in the market, and if there is a good market demand and the investor is ready to pay 750 or 700 rupees, why company will not be taking that much of money from the investors when the shares are issued? Obviously they would be taking 700 rupees straight away. So 100 rupees would be the face value. Rest of the money will be considered as the security premium. So security premium will also be forming a part of the retained earnings. Now basically this retained earnings is belonging to the equity shareholders only. Equity shareholders have the ultimate right over this retained earnings because they are the owners of the company. So the cost of the equity will be applicable to the cost of the retained earning as well. You are not supposed to find the cost for the retained earning differently. The ultimate right over these internal accruals is of the owners of the company, right? Who are the owners? Equity shareholders are the owners. They have got the right on it. At the time of the liquidation of the company, my friends, when the companies are getting shut down, the primary right to get the money from the liquidated and the realized assets of the company belongs to the secured liabilities. Might be the secured debentures, might be the secured loans. Then from the outsiders, unsecured liabilities would be paid from the realized assets of the company when the companies are shutting down. Then the next right to get the assets belongs to the preference shareholders, and the residual rights is of the equity shareholders. So all the reserves and surpluses which they have got after making payment, the fixed payment to all the liabilities putting together, my friends, rest everything belongs to the equity shareholders. So basically all the reserves and surpluses will be left with the equity shareholders. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the internal accruals when they are used as the source of finance in the business? The first advantage, it is readily available. That is the money gathered by a company. No permissions are supposed to be taken from anyone. Company can utilize it on its own. No need to go to outsiders to seek any permission related to utilization of this money. It represents the infusion of the additional equity. My friends, this reserves and surplus is basically a part of the equity only. Now there is one ratio called as the PB ratio in the market. Now PB ratio stands out for price to book value. Now price of the share is the actual market price of the share decided by the suppliers and buyers of the shares. That is the market driven price. That would obviously be different from the actual book value of the share. I would tell you that how to interpret that ratio. Now in the denominator we have something called book value of a share. So book value of a share is found by using the formula of net worth of the company divided by number of shares. Now, how this net worth of the company is identified? Net worth is basically the equity capital plus reserves and surpluses which companies have gathered over a period of time. Now, what will happen if the companies have very good reserves and surpluses, then the net worth would be very high. And if the net worth would be very high, then the book value of the share would be very high. If the book value of the share would be very sound and very good, then the PB ratio will be low, because book value isn't there in a denominator in this ratio, you know. And if the denominator would be high, then the PB ratio would be low. And if the PB ratio is low, that is the sign of the undervaluation of the stock. I was very optimistic about the Tata Motors when I had invested during the Corona time, because there was a favorable PB ratio. They had a book value of somewhere around 170 rupees, and their stock was selling at 60 rupees only. Based on taking the net worth in the financial statements of the company, my friend, if they have got a really good book value of 170 rupees, then there was a no logic of that share to be traded at 60 rupees. It was a strong purchasing signal for the Tata Motors at that time. PB ratio is used as an indicator to identify which stock is overvalued, which stock is undervalued. That is one of the indicators. Obviously, there are many. And generally, the PB ratios lower than 3 is considered to be a positive sign for the company. But if it is more than 3, then they are considered to be extremely overvalued stocks. The simple meaning of more than 3, you can identify that their actual market price is say 150 and the book value is just a 50. So current market price derived by the demand and supply forces is 3 times higher than the actual price which it deserves as per the financial statements of the company. Why the people are so optimistic about this? I'm not saying that if it is more than 3, you should not be investing at all. No, you can invest. You should invest, even if it is more than 3. If you have the future potential expectations from the company, which are irrationally high. If you take some of the companies like Tesla, their PB ratios are sky high in hundreds. Their PE ratios are sky high. Their PB ratios are sky high because investors are buying that stock even at a too much of overvaluation, because they are expecting the earnings of the Tesla Motors to go unexpectedly high in the near upcoming future. People invest in the share for the future, not for the past and the present. But generally, we have seen that no markets have ever survived whose average PB ratio, by taking into account all the stocks, of that market. Say in India, we have something called a Nifty, which is representing 50 equity stocks, which are the highly regarded 50 companies of India in terms of the market capitalization. Now, if the average PB ratio of Nifty goes too much, that gives you an idea that how the entire market is overvalued or undervalued right now. Now, markets generally do not survive after 3 PB ratios, but right now the PB ratios are somewhere between say 6 to 7 in India. I don't know why people are trading the stocks at such an overvaluations, Even though we are not able to see any near-term recovery of the businesses, yes, recovery will take place. We are optimistic about it, but it will take some time. Some of the businesses are absolutely shattered. It will take some time for them to grow. It will take some time for the economy to grow again. The liquidity from the economy is being taken away. People have spent thousands of crores in the healthcare and many other things. The savings of the people are just on the verge of extinction. 6 to 7 PB ratio of the overall market of Nifty is a sky high ratio which is considered to be overvaluation. Higher the PB ratio, it's an overvaluation. Lower the PB ratio, it's an undervaluation. You can find it for the individual stocks too. You can find it for the average market too. Now, why I'm telling this in this reserves and surpluses is that, my friends, in book value, this reserves and surplus forms a very, very important part. If the reserves and surpluses of the companies are very strong, then the book value will be strong and the company's position will be very strong. If the stock will be undervalued, then investors would be willing to invest more in those stocks because you have gathered your own money. You are not dependent on anyone now. If you want to expand or grow further, you can finance it from your own reserves and surpluses. You will not be begging to anyone to seek the money from anyone. Obviously, that's a positive sign from the investor's perspective. That's been taken always positively by the investors. That's why it represents the infusion of the additional equity only. It's nothing but the equity. You can go to the fourth one as well. Stock market generally views retained earnings with a very positive connotation. Those companies whose retained earnings and reserves and surpluses are good are always considered positively by the shareholders. There is no dilution of control as well when this retained earning is used, obviously, because they are the internally generated funds of the company. Though the ultimate right over these funds belongs to the equity shareholders, but that would remain with the company till the time company would exist. Disadvantages. The amount raised by retained earning would be limited. Company may not have it, company may have it. If they do not have the sufficient money, it's limited in nature. If you want to finance a great project involving too much of capital, then returned earning wouldn't be sufficient for you to finance that entire project. They are limited. How much profit you would have generated in terms of your assets in comparison with your total assets? And from that profits as well, you are supposed to first distribute the dividend to the equity shareholders, and then remaining amount would be taken as the reserves and surplus. But if the companies are having the good reserves and surplus, that's well and good, but it's very limited in number. The quantum of retained earning is highly variable because companies typically use stable dividend policy and the retained earnings gets utilized in the payment of dividend. Generally what happens is that even when the companies are not making the profits, then companies try to give the dividend as much as possible from their side, because dividend is again something considered very positively by the stakeholders. Being a finance student, rational finance student, you shouldn't be applying that blanket rule that dividend is always better. You will come to know that in some of the circumstances the dividend is not good at all, but still, if you consider the majority, it's always been considered positive. Now, to maintain the stable dividend policy, the companies will have to pay the dividend even from their reserves and surpluses, which they have gathered over a period of time. Sometimes in the current accounting period, they might not have the good amount of profits to distribute, but still they will have to give the dividend to maintain their stable dividend policy. So the amount gets fluctuated. the opportunity cost of retained earnings is very high. Let me share one very good example with all of you. One of my friend was there who has got a tremendous business in the marketing yard. Their business of the groceries is working very well near to the Bedigaon. If you see, near to Marwadi University, there is a marketing yard where the groceries are being sold and distributed in the wholesale market. They have the business over there. Now, they wanted to take the home, purchase the home. And they took the home loan for that. So I was skeptical about them. I said, why you have taken the home loan when you have already got a good amount of reserves and surpluses? Then they were like, see, Ronak, we have got the reserves and surpluses, but the home loans are available at very cheaper rates. Now, I am not telling you to take the home loans or loans wherever it is feasible from your side in every circumstances. But you got to see that if your money which you have gathered in your business, if that can be utilized in a better way, then take the loan which is available at the cheaper rates. If I give you a very simple example, he said me that, see, if I would be purchasing one vehicle of that particular grocery containing many kgs of the goods, then the amount that then the return I'm going to generate from this business would be quite high. Say they have purchased one gadi at 2 lakhs rupees, and the same would be sold at 2,20,000 rupees just in a 5 days. Then what's the return you have got? 20,000 rupees, right? On that one vehicle. Now 20,000 rupees on 2 lakhs rupees, that is basically 10% just in 5 days. Now 5% in 10 days, you can imagine that what percentage of return it would be for the entire year. Now, if you have the existing opportunity to invest your retained earnings profitably, if there is a current market demand for your goods and services, you can employ your retained earnings in that business, then take the loan for some of the things which are available at very cheaper rates. The home loans were basically available at 6.5% to 7% rates. And he said me, Ronak, if I would be putting this money into the home loans for purchasing the home, then this money would be blocked. Rather than that, I am ready to pay 7% of the interest on that loan, because in business, the return which I am going to earn from this money would be tremendous. You got to see that what is the opportunity cost you have. In finance, the decisions are taken by considering the opportunity cost, my friend. What you are losing to earn something. Just because of the fact that you do not want to take the loan, you are losing the 10% of the interest, and that too just in a 5 days. So yearly expected return would be sky high. That is possible only if this money can further be invested into the business. So the opportunity cost with that retained earning is always high. You can always earn higher amount from your business. If you occupy this money into your business, the chances of you being earning more interest obviously are more than what you pay in terms of the interest on home loans. So the opportunity cost is sky high. It's not always advisable to take everything without taking the loan. If the loans are available to you at the cheaper rates, then you should be taking. Now, generally this is considered to be the ideal ratio, 2:1 for debt to equity. So that means if you take 2 times the debt of your equity, in the numerator you have a debt and in the denominator you have got the equity. then your financial position is good. So it's not always like if you are debt free, then it is taken negatively. You should also be taking the advantages of the debt. Now, this may not be applicable to all the companies in a blanket manner, but generally it's been considered ideal at 2:1. So debt is not something which is always, criticized. You should be taking it if it is available at the cheaper rates. Retained earnings is nothing but the dividends foregone by the equity shareholders. So equity shareholders would obviously be putting the more pressure on you to issue the dividend from the retained earnings. The companies will have to give them the strong justifications that we would be utilizing this money for our future purpose, business expansion and maintenance. Because basically this retained earnings is the dividend foregone by the equity shareholders. So from the profits, the companies have got the two alternatives. One, they issue the dividend. Another, they would be transferring this money to reserves and surpluses. So all the money which has been transferred to reserves and surpluses, that is basically the dividend which is sacrificed by a company, right? So if the companies have got the good reserves and surpluses, then the equity shareholders will constantly, continuously put the pressure on the company to issue the dividend out of it. So that is also a disadvantages of the internal accrual. So I hope you are absolutely clear with the internal accruals. May I have the confirmation from the students, the final one, please? So what we have done today is that we have understood the disadvantages of the term loans entirely. We have understood the debentures, their distinct features, and we have also taken the advantages and disadvantages of the retained earnings as a source of finance. In the next session, we will be completing the preference shares, and then we'll move to the practical aspects of the cost of finance. And we people are aware that the inclination of us would obviously be a data driven, so we would be doing these exercises on the real time practical databases. But before that, our conceptual understanding should be absolutely clear. That's it from my side for the day. Please put your enrollment number as a mark of your attendance. If you have any queries or question, you couldn't understand anything, please let me know right now. That's it from my side. Bye bye. Take care. Sayonara. Enjoy the rest of the day, guys. Take care. Take care, everyone.